you can't leave your fun fact out. This video is sponsored by Pleasance Cafe Bar. Welcome to Dylan's Coffee Catch-Up. I'm going to talk you through what I've been up to since the start of semester, and I'm going to start with the meetings I've been at. I've been to quite a lot of meetings. That's quite a lot of what this job is. I describe being a sabbatical officer as representing students at the highest levels of the university, if that's a committee, project board, or campaign, to enact positive change for students. So that's a lot of what I do in all these meetings. So the meetings I was at sort of in the start of the semester was a lot of Senate meetings. Senate's posh name is Senatus Academicus. It's really funny. It's very legal and old, with documents going back to sort of the 1900s. A lot of the regulations are also quite outdated, so often a lot of the work is updating those. Senate itself has 3 subcommittees. So you've got what I'd call Big Senate, you've got Senate Education Committee, Senate Quality Assurance Committee, or SQAC, as it's commonly known for, like the duck. And then you've also got APRC, which is Academic Policy and Regulations Committee. One of the first meetings I went to was Library Committee. I was on Library Committee last year as the business school rep. It was quite good. Mainly you talk about policies and how much they're spending on books, basically, and how the operations of the library are going. I raised some of the issues, like the long queues for getting your student cards in Welcome Week, and other issues around space in the library. The committee that's related to that is IT Committee, which is where you talk about sort of resources, funding, and this time specifically around AI. And the university's new sort of large language model platform called Elm, which every single student has access to. It's really important because it allows everybody to get access to the latest versions of ChatGPT, which means that you don't have to pay, so you can cancel those subscriptions and use the university's version. You can feed to me if you want to have seen any new features, because they're developing it internally, so they can add things to the roadmap. They're also looking at AI guidance for students. I've helped sort of shape that to make sure that it's clear what is good about sort of Elm and what's good about what you can do with the policy, rather than what you can't do and sounding quite punitive. The crux of it is normally ask your course organizer if it's okay or not. But the guidance does have some good tips and tricks of where to use it and where not to use it normally. Looping back to Senate, all the Senate committees then started. So I was on to Senate Quality Assurance Committee. We mainly talked about the school annual quality reports, which is where they talk about how each school is doing, some of the things they're doing well, some of the things they need to improve on, and then they pick out themes. So across the university, what's going well, what's not going so well, and how we can improve that. We also talked about this thing called internal periodic reviews, where each school every 5 years, they look at all bits of it, so every single course, program, and it's really detailed and thorough. So there's still some themes which normally match the school annual quality reports. At the university, a lot of the things that need to be improved are often agreed upon and known. It's just making sure that something actually happens with that and things move forward. Another committee I went to was Senate Education Committee, chaired by Colin Halman. So in SEC, or Senate Education Committee, it's hard to get the acronyms and stuff. We mainly talk about sort of everything. So everything the Senate Quality Assurance Committee, everything the APR, the Academic Policy Committee talks about, all comes into this committee, and then this committee talks about even more. So it's quite a wide ranging from sort of AI to student experience to policies. The nice thing about these committees is often they have college reps. So if you're in College of Vet Med and Med, or if you're in College of Science and Engineering or College of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, often staff from there are representing sort of the student and sort of staff views from each of those different colleges. So it's quite a diverse thing, and often they report back to staff and I report back to students. In the following week, we sort of finish off the sort of round of committees as such, with academic policy committee, where we talked about postgraduate research students, otherwise known as PhD students normally, or Masters of Research students. We're talking about sort of policies around that, and how to make sure that the policy actually align with the reality of how long it does take to do a PhD, and so that we're not penalising students if they take too long or making it hard for them, and just to sort of align those. I liked academic policy committee the most, although sounding the most boring. I quite liked the structure, and I could understand what was going on a lot easier. For the Senate induction, so this was like now introducing people to Big Senate, so new people joining to go to Big Senate. Sort of Peter Matheson, who's sort of the principal, talked, the new Secretary of Senate talked, Colin Hallman talked, and then I gave a talk on why student representation is so important and listening to students is so important, and that not to think of students as some other group, but a core part of what everything we do at the university is for, really. We wouldn't be a university if it wasn't for students being here. We'd simply just be a research institute. I asked all the students to stand up when I was giving the talk, and it sort of was really nice to sort of show that students aren't just this other thing that we talk about in meetings but aren't at meetings, but they're physically there sort of watching, and there's quite a few of us. One of the other meetings I was on sort of after sort of these first few weeks of meetings was our board of trustees, which is when all the trustees of a charity meet to make sure that the charity is going well and make any important decisions. So the Student Association is a charity. It does hold within it some businesses, which I'm a director of, but I'm also a trustee of the charity, which those companies are within. Because we're a charity, we don't make profit, we simply make surplus, which just gets integrated straight back into funding things for students, such as like the advice place, student voice, and sort of support for societies and things like that. And then the final meeting I'm going to touch on is the College of Medicine and Veterinary Medicine Education Committee. So I'm on all the college's education committees, where they sort of discuss sort of priorities that they're having, and other sort of things they're looking for approval on, for say for new policy changes or guidance, and just updates. It's really interesting to sort of see the culture. I went out to Easter Bush, I went to the vet school. It's really nice. I think the vibes there were just crazy. Like the vet school sort of student satisfaction is sort of industry leading in the UK for like vet schools. And I think it really shows that when you have your own campus, the timetable is amazing because there's no clashes, everything's planned out perfectly. You can really create that community of having sort of the canteen downstairs and the rooms. You're all doing sort of the same thing. I think it really is sort of like a case study for what the rest of the university could sort of look at to improve student experience. Like it is literally all there for them to see, and the stats show it. It was really cool to sort of sit down and chat with some of the students there and sort of hear about what they're studying and stuff, and how their experiences before I went into the meeting. So one thing of my fun facts is that the library committee I touched on is actually a legal requirement that we have to have. It's just sort of like every union in the UK has to have a student association. They similarly have to have a library committee. Another fun fact is I quoted Peter Matheson in my Senate induction when I gave that talk, because he sort of said that, you are Edinburgh in his newsletter, in his letter to students, like welcoming them in. And I just sort of wanted to sort of say that, we are Edinburgh as students. We make this sort of a university. And I think that's really sort of important to sort of say. My other fun fact is that I'm a director of a company, which is quite funny to say as a 22-year-old. I'm a director of a company, a trustee of charity, and a sabbatical officer. It's pretty cool, but I don't think it's something that maybe you'd know. So first, I'd like to spend a lot more time with students in Welcome Week, but I had to attend the meetings because they are big and important. So hopefully next year, the next sabbatical officers won't have to do that. Hopefully. I also sort of notice sort of that like words are power and influential, and you do need to be like quite mindful of how seriously people take what you say, and be quite be mindful of sort of the power that this position has. Um, and I think as a student representative, sort of being elected by students, it's something that you do have to sort of keep in mind as you do sort of everything, and it's sort of like an important part of the role. Um, and sort of lastly is that I think with a few sort of student facing things and other meetings, I think the space that you're involved in really makes difference to the type of meeting that you have. If it's a small room, I think often people talk a bit quieter and it's a bit more intimate and people are a bit more friendly. If it's a bigger room, people feel a little bit less attached to certain people and can sort of talk sort of a bit more freely maybe. Um, and just sort of standing up and sort of chatting to people, I think is the best sort of way to do things. Because I think one of the biggest takeaways is, staff are just people, students are just people talking to other people. It's like any other conversation. Their place of seniority is sort of artificial in a way that, yes, they have that position, but also they're just a person at the end of the day, and you can just talk to them, and you should respect them for that as well. So yeah, that was my recap of my first few weeks of the semester. Touched on a few big meetings. I went to with more meetings than that and done a lot of other work on my priorities of trying to improve student voice by creating structures and empowering the student voice. Looking at course selection, timetabling, where I've attended a lot of different committees and projects around that, which are starting up, and I'm very excited about that. I'm also looking at to create alumni banners so that we don't just have little like speech bubbles with welcome around campus, or when you think about the university, you just think of the university logo and the colour navy. Like, what faces and community do we have? How can we be proud of our community? It's something I'm working on, and we're going to start a new committee around that to look at how we can get funding and move forward with that. I'm looking at how we can educate students, empower them, and guide them to the appropriate services. Because at the moment there's not a one-stop shop. So like when like myself was going through uni, is like how can like where's the right service? I've got no idea. I have to go to Google, which is quite funny. So I want to make sure that other students have an easier time. And lastly, I'm working on desk hogging in the library so that when people leave their stuff for hours, that stuff can be moved away so then someone else can sit on that desk. Because there's not enough space in the library for people to be hogging, and I think it's really important for everyone to have access to that space. So that's been my coffee catch up with Dylan. I'll see you in a few weeks' time.